Welcome to your Aged Care Compass podcast. Join us to find out how to support your older loved ones at home. We're going to help you make sense of Australia's aged care system. We talk about legal and financial considerations for ageing and how chronic health conditions impact your older loved ones' well-being. And we share real-life stories of where it went wrong for people and how we got them back on track.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode. I'm Coral Wilkinson, your host, and I have Kathryn Ewan of Dovida joining me again this week. Kathryn, welcome back. Last week we discussed what a person should consider when researching a great provider for their home care package, and we spoke about Dovida's process of onboarding a new client, as well as ongoing support and reviewing your client's needs as the situation changes. In today's episode, we're going to take a closer look at what the new in-home aged care program, Support at Home, looks like for current recipients of a home care package. Support at Home is the merging of the Home Care Packages program and the Short-Term Restorative Care program. Support at Home also has 3 aligned but separately funded programs or pathways, being the Restorative Care Pathway, similar to short-term restorative care, the Assistive Technology and Home Modifications funding, and the Palliative Pathway for people who are at end of life. Support at Home commences on July the 1st this year. It's a huge change for people receiving services at home, as well as for the providers who deliver those services. How is Dovida preparing for July 1st?
Wow. Well, first of all, Coral, thank you so much for having me back. I'm nervous to talk about this topic, as you know, and even listening to some of those words that you've just mentioned in your introduction, that is a lot for us to get our head around, isn't it? So, we've got some massive changes for both the older people receiving care already, and of course, the providers that are scrambling to understand the changes and make sure that we can deliver the services. So, how are we preparing? Well, mainly trying to understand the changes ourselves and then communicating those out to everybody involved. So obviously for our existing clients, we're reassuring them that services will continue as usual and that they will continue to receive that high level of care that they so deserve and need. And we'll be backing up, reassuring our clients with information around that. I am anticipating that major concerns are going to be around funding and obviously how that's going to impact clients' budgets and private contributions as well. We've got lots of discussions around that. We know how difficult it is to understand the current system, so trying to put changes on top of that is particularly challenging. And at this point in time, when I'm talking to people, we're obviously trying to explain what we've got currently with our CHSP or Commonwealth Home Support Programme and home care packages, because that's what we're dealing with today. But we've got to obviously address that we've got these changes coming up. So my biggest challenge really is how big that conversation is and just trying to drip feed information to people as they need to know things. So we've been putting together some community information sessions so people can pop along and find out more. Of course, they can give us a call and we'll help on an individual basis because it is such an individual conversation. And I've even been roped into doing some short videos too. So that's been fun. Just little snippets to try and break down again where, little tiny bits of, if you're in this situation, this is how it's going to apply to you. We're not too worried in terms of the improvements that we hopefully will see with support at homes are around person-centred care and the improvement in how providers are delivering care. And we've been doing that all along anyway. So thankfully for us, not too worried about that bit. We won't have to really have an attitude shift in how we're delivering our services. So at least that's a bonus for us.
Yeah, and you mentioned that last week, that your service provision is relationship-based rather than task-based, which I really loved to hear that from you, because we often think about a person, needs domestic assistance and needs someone to mow their yard for them, but not everybody does. and it's being person-centered. It really is about the individual's needs.
Yeah, definitely.
There's not a generic approach to service provision.
That's right. And I think even with domestic assistance, it's just domestic assistance, but we still want this continuity of care for the same person to be going in so that they get to know their clients and they are also delivering that service in the way that that client wants that. If you want your mopping done first and then your bathrooms, then we want to know that so we can do it in the way that you have always done it and the way that you want to be able to continue having your home looked after. So definitely relationship, not necessarily just task.
Yeah, excellent. Like you just said, this is a huge discussion, and it is absolutely impossible for us to talk about and demystify every aspect of just one part of these reforms we're going through, which is the in-home program support at home. There's so much to that. But I think we'll focus on a few of the key topics today that we're continuing to see uncertainty about from the community and see if we can just provide a bit of reassurance about what that means. And certainly people who all these people have home care packages, but they may not be able to have the kind of communication with their provider that you're offering us today in this episode. So I think it will be great for a lot of listeners to actually hear this kind of information from a provider.
Thank you.
So let's talk about some of the key points that people are asking relating to these changes, and the funding arrangements might be a good place to start. People who are receiving a home care package right now, or as at 12th of September last year when all this kicked off, cannot be worse off as we transition into support at home. So what this means from a financial perspective is that people who are not contributing to the services they receive from their package right now will not be subject to the co-contribution fees. I know there was a lot of angst in the community about this, and the question we were all asking was, okay, well, how long is this arrangement going to go on for? Is it going to be 1 year or 2 years or 3 years? And then will it all change? But it's become very clear now, and even our aged care minister has publicly stated that people who are contributing nothing towards the cost of their in-home care now will never contribute towards the care or support they receive at home, even if they need an upgrade of their home care package or classification, as it's going to be known on the 1st of July. Now, this is a huge relief for people. As I mentioned, we all wondered, how long would these people be protected for? But it's clear now they're going to be protected ongoing, forever. Well, I guess I should say at this point it's clear that it's going to be forever. But I'm not the government. I'm not the Department of Health and Aged Care. So at this point in time, there is that assurance that people who are not contributing right now will not contribute in the future. Do your clients understand this aspect of support at home, or are you still getting a lot of confusion or nervousness relating to this aspect?
Honestly, I'm concerned that people aren't aware yet to be concerned, if you know what I mean. So I think there's such little information in general out in the public.
Yes.
And I was just at a retirement village yesterday, and a lady came along with her carer, her support worker from another organisation, and the support worker didn't know about support at home. And it was interesting because they picked up one of my leaflets and I said, and explained about it. And she went, I don't need one of those because I work for a different provider. And I said, no, this isn't a provider. This is a government. So that was a little bit concerning that staff that are supporting seniors they're not aware. And then in terms of queries that I was receiving from clients in the system already receiving mainly CHSP level of services, nobody's heard anything. So then I'm starting the conversation
Good
to say,
grief.
when you hear, please don't worry, because thankfully we are hearing about these grandfathering arrangements. So that's starting to niggle with me, that I think there's
Yeah.
not a great deal of awareness, because it's not in the mainstream media as far as I've seen, or that people seem to be seeing. So then are we going to have a big panic as we approach, and then that task's going to be harder to calm everybody down. But
Yeah,
we can only do what we can do, and
absolutely.
that's why we're
Yeah.
chatting today.
Exactly. That's exactly why we're having these conversations now, because I agree with you. I think there's going to be the opening of the floodgates of angst and apprehension
Yes,
from the community once the information, is really out there. I mean, it is in a sense, but I think, at a professional or a corporate level, we know about it and we know where to go and find this information. But I agree with you, it's just not being disseminated down to recipients, to the
no,
wider community. Yeah.
no, no. So I think for anybody listening that is CHSP, if you know how to identify, and I know we spoke about this in our earlier episode. So CHSP or CHISP, or Commonwealth Home Support Programme, you can usually identify if you're under that programme, if you're contributing a little bit towards the cost of your care on an hourly basis, so $15 or $20 an hour co-contribution, and an hour and a half of cleaning a fortnight. If that
Yep.
sounds like the support you're receiving, then you're probably Commonwealth Home Support, and you haven't got to worry just yet. I think it's going to be more impactful on people that are receiving the home care packages, not necessarily, like you say, for their contributions, which I'm sure we'll expand on later, but certainly in how services are going to be delivered, I
Yes.
think.
Yes. So, Kathryn, under support at home, there will be 3 different categories of support. So this carries on perfectly from the comment that you just made. Service provision is going to change in a sense of what people can receive, what they've been approved for. But let's just have a chat about the 3 different categories of support, because, these categories have different levels of financial contribution or co-contribution attached to them. As we said, people who are not contributing now or at the 12th of September last year will not have to, but there will certainly be people who were making some financial contribution with regards to their income tested fee. This will certainly apply to them. What are the 3 categories of support? Can you explain those for our listeners, please?
Yes, absolutely. So, as you say, with a home care package, we've been used to clients having a budget or a pot of money that they can choose to spend on the services that they're prioritizing for their individual circumstance. With support at home, the government have split all that those huge array of supports and services into 3 service categories, and that's what they're calling them, because I like these new terms, because we've got a
Yeah.
whole new vocabulary to get used to as well. So 3 service categories. The first one, clinical supports. So that's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to include obviously any nursing care and allied health services, so podiatry, physiotherapy, things like that. And do you want me to expand on what the contribution level is, Coral, at this point?
Absolutely. Go
Yeah.
for it. Yeah, do it,
So
Kathryn.
happy to say the government have committed for anybody being approved to access those services, the government will 100% cover the cost of those
It's
services.
wonderful.
So that's
Yeah.
really, really good, and a relief for us, certainly. The next service category is called independence. And so this is to help supports and services to help someone manage their activities of daily living. And that includes services such as personal care, social support, respite care, community engagement, and transport. So, pretty vital things in there. Now, there will be a private contribution element to people accessing those services of between 5 and 50%. So again, that will be determined by Services Australia, just the same as the income tested fee was. So that's going to be a very individual figure.
Mm.
And I can only assume that the 5% would be for somebody who is on a full Australian pension or equivalent. And the
Yes.
50% would be for somebody who's fully privately funded.
Yes.
And then people will fall somewhere in that, their percentage contribution will fall somewhere within that scope of 5 and 50%, depending on their individual circumstances. The third category that they're calling, service category, I got that right, that they're calling everyday living. And so that's for keeping your home in a safe and livable condition to keep you independent in that home. And so that includes domestic assistance, laundry, shopping assistance, gardening, meal preparation and delivery, and home maintenance. And so, again, some pretty vital things in there. And the contribution element of that is between 17.5% to 80%. So, again, assuming full Australian pensioner, 17.5% of the cost of those services will need to be privately contributed. Up to a fully funded retiree would be expected to contribute 80%. So some significant change there from what we're used to seeing.
That's right. Yeah. And at this stage, we know that and people might say, well, what is the hourly rate? Like, what is the cost of these services? So we know that for the next 12 months, as it is at the moment, providers can determine or will be determining their own cost for that service per hour. But from July 2026, that's what we're currently being told, that will be determined. There will be a definitive amount determined for each of those services. The department's working on that at the moment. There's lots of consultation happening about what do those costs look like? What should they look like? So just in case people are thinking, well, what is it going to cost me? What might I have to contribute for my domestic assistance? I think, tell me if this is not a fair comment, because you're the one that's working, you're a provider. Nothing's going to, well, I shouldn't say nothing's going to change. I don't think it's so difficult, isn't it?
Very hard.
I think that from where I'm sitting, I don't think there are going to be dramatic changes in prices of services. There may be some movement because we know that package management fee is going to be no longer. What are you thinking? Like, from Dovida's point of view, is this something that people should be concerned about, or can they be reassured that there's not going to be a dramatic change from 1st of July this year up until when the government determines what those prices are, middle of 26?
Such a difficult question. Thank you for that one. Initially, when these changes were advertised, the government had proposed that they were going to tell providers how much we were going to be. Well, they were going to cap it. So I suppose they don't mind if we charge less, but we weren't allowed to charge more than a certain price. And they promised us that figure in November. And then they said, oh, we haven't got it ready yet. It's going to be December. And then in December, they said, actually, we're going to let the market decide. And I think that's an important and crucial point to this, isn't it? Because I think that naturally providers, well, say that, I would hope that they wouldn't be rushing out to then go and put their prices. They couldn't, because the market will, to be competitive and make sure that we don't, as a provider, not necessarily just Dovida, but we don't want to lose all our clients if we're suddenly more expensive than the rest. However, like you say, we are keeping an eye on the fact that the government are putting caps on other potential income streams or income areas as well. So I am really glad that that is above my pay grade and I don't have to make that decision with how much we need to charge a client. And, and it is concerning oh yeah, my brain just, I can't. And this is what I mean. I work for Dovida, I work in the industry, and I struggle with this. So
Yes.
when I'm explaining this to the people that I'm supporting to help them understand how, that's a really difficult question. And
It
so,
sure is. And I'm really sorry for
oh, no, I don't mind.
for torturing you with that
I think
question.
it's really good because this is what we're up against, that we
Yes.
don't
Yeah,
know enough. We don't know how it's going to land in real life.
absolutely.
And then we need to support sometimes some very vulnerable people
Yeah.
through this process. It's fun times. It's going to be really interesting. Obviously, it's very person centered in terms of, the recipient has been surely in the front of everybody's mind when these decisions are being made.
Yeah.
How providers are going to cope with that, we'll wait and see. I know that there's going to have to be a lot of efficiencies made in how we as providers are delivering services, because it strikes, I mean, we're really going a bit off topic, but part of the things that clients or our customers don't really need to know is that providers are also being asked to deliver a lot of extra reporting as well. So it's almost, and that happens so often, doesn't it? They want more
Yes.
from us for less.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on, and we need to we need to remain viable because we have
Yes.
people that need this support and it's essential. So yeah, yeah, like I say, fun times.
We're being kept on our toes, that's for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Mhm.
So, Kathryn, I'm a registered nurse. The fact that clinical care will never be subject to fees is great news. So, we just discussed about people who are not contributing now as of 12th of September will not have to contribute. But even people who, currently are paying that income tested fee, as we move to support at home on July the 1st, if those people need nursing support or physiotherapy, they won't actually have to contribute. So when we hear the discussion around people will be no worse off, and I've seen it, there are commentators, and it's true, some people actually are going to be better off. So people who were continuing, who were contributing, a significant amount of income tested fee, if they're having clinical care, they don't have to contribute to that. And as a registered nurse, that makes me really excited. I come from a reablement background, having worked in transition care program when that was implemented in my hospital and health service back in the 90s. I implemented the short-term restorative care program for a provider. And with my own parents, they both had a number of clinicians involved with their care, and this ensured that we kept them as well and safe and mobile as we possibly could when they were living at home. Does Dovida include clinical support within care planning, and what types of clinicians are referred to support your package recipients?
Oh, yes, the short answer, yes, we do. We speak to any of the healthcare professionals or specialists involved in an individual's care. So that can include their GP, allied health professionals, or dementia specialists. Perhaps
Yeah,
if they're leaving hospital, there might be a whole team of specialists that we need to liaise with as well. Obviously, everybody's so unique, and because this is person centered and we've always been person centered, we'll tailor what they need to their needs and speak to whoever we need to on a clinical level, depending on what's required.
fantastic. I really, I beat my little drum about this all the time, about the value that clinicians bring to a person's well-being.
Definitely.
So, presently, only providers who are approved to deliver the short-term restorative care program can do so. But come July the 1st, all providers will be allowed to deliver the restorative care pathway. Is this an area of support Dovida is looking to offer, Kathryn?
Yes, definitely. It's something we're exploring. Some of our team members are already registered nurses, and we're looking to recruit in that field to be able to better support our clients.
Excellent.
And I, you know what, Coral, I think you're better placed than me to just explain to your listeners about the value of that clinical support, just much in a broader way than I can. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, so look, this, short-term restorative care is the program that I love most. And in the consultation groups that I was involved in, over the past 12 months and more, I was able to contribute about, restorative care or short-term restorative care. What I said was, it is such an excellent program, just don't touch it, just leave it as it is. But, that wasn't going to happen. But, we still have this restorative care pathway under support at home. So I'm really excited about that. And what I'm also excited about is that what I've just said, under, previous funding allocation rounds, there were only a select group of providers that were authorised or were allowed to deliver short-term restorative care. Very different to with home care packages where people can choose any provider. Come the 1st of July, any providers now will be allowed to deliver this restorative care pathway. So I'm just so excited about this, very happy about it, because the value that clinicians bring to a person's well-being and their independence is really, it just makes such a difference. And to put that into sort of context with my own parents, now my parents didn't. I implemented short-term restorative care program for a provider, but neither of my parents, STRC wasn't available when my dad came into the system. My mum already had a home care package, so that excluded her from being eligible for short-term restorative care. But with both of my parents, I still supported them with their home care packages with a reablement approach or restorative approach. So I had a lot of clinicians involved with mum and dad's care. And honestly, that's literally what kept my parents, particularly my mum, on her feet. So mum had 3 significant health issues over, a 3-year period. It was like around Christmas every year. She ended up in hospital. She was septic for one admission. She had a strangulated hernia. Another time, like serious, she was rushed to emergency surgery, like big, big things for an older person. And when mum came out of hospital, she was so deconditioned and had lost a lot of confidence. She stayed with me for weeks on end. And at that time, I was like, gosh, am I going to be able to get mum home, or are we at that point where she needs to go into residential care? So knowing what was achievable, because I had worked in that short-term restorative care, I got every clinician I could involved, relating to what mum needed. And I had, mum saw a dietitian because in one of those hospital episodes, she was diagnosed with diabetes. So we wanted to make sure what she was eating was correct. She had exercise physiology one-on-one in her home twice a week. She also went to a group exercise class twice a week, and that also doubled as social connection, community connection for her. Had a registered nurse who specialised in continence involved as well, and also an occupational therapist, because we did have to make some modifications and purchase some equipment. So by being able to bring those clinicians in, some of them, the dietitian, short period of time frame, the ongoing OT was 1 or 2 assessment and then a review. But the exercise physiologist and physiotherapy and certainly the podiatry was ongoing. And honestly, that's what kept my mum upright. If she hadn't had those clinicians coming in, I can go over and visit her and say, hey, mummy, you're doing your exercise. Well, you can guess what my mum said to me. Oh, yes, love, but we knew that, she wouldn't do that for me. Well, she might, but I didn't have the time. So like my colleagues coming into the home or her going to the group exercise classes, if my mum hadn't been doing that, at any time, even after those hospital admissions, she would have sat in her chair, and her, her mobility would have been restricted to moving from her bed to the shower to the lounge room and back to bed. So if she hadn't had that support from clinicians, she would have deconditioned, she would have declined at a much more rapid rate. So having those clinicians involved really is what kept Mum well and able and independent and safe at home. And, I often, we were just chatting before about people, when people are thinking about the support that they need, they might think in terms of, I struggle to mop the floor, I need some help with domestic assistance, or I get too short of breath, I need someone to mow the yard. And that's all appropriate. But, I encourage people to think beyond that and think, well, if you're getting a little bit short of breath, or if your mobility is not great and that's why you're not going out into the community, let's get a clinician in and enhance or optimize your well-being. Let's get you doing a little bit of exercise so that your endurance improves, and so your stability and your balance improves and your mobility is safer. So given what we've just said about moving forward, there will be no contributions attached to clinical care. I just want to encourage people to really think about that and think about the value a clinician can bring, and have it included, as they're going through assessments now. They might be, we've talked about ACAT and RAS, but it's the single assessment service. Think about how a clinician can help you to be as well as you can. And then from your support plan, and again, we discussed this last week, moving into your care plan, have those clinicians included in your care plan, because you won't have to contribute to that kind of service provision moving forward.
Oh, Coral, that has been so valuable for me. I knew this anyway, but the way that you explain
I get on my
that,
soapbox, don't I? I'm just like, clinicians, you've
yes,
got to have them, people. Yeah.
yeah, because so often I am and I was yesterday, as I mentioned, at the expo, and people are talking about, cleaning, gardening, transport,
Yes.
and yes, they are really important. But when you expand on that in the way that you just did, I am excited to think, yes, we have to look beyond this. And I think that, but again, it's a gap in knowledge, isn't it? If you don't know that these services are available and accessible and the difference they can make, it
Friends.
opens up a whole new scope. So now I'm really excited that
Well, look, I'm
that we're
telling you,
able to do that.
Dovida, corporate office Dovida, you guys absolutely need to be
We're going to get all
delivering
over
the
this.
restorative
Yeah,
care pathway.
yeah,
You do.
definitely. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. I'll make sure that they're listening in.
I think I just hijacked your interview, Kathryn. But anyway, it's something I feel very strongly about, and like I said, I'm super excited that it's opening up to the wider market, that all providers now, if they choose, can deliver this restorative care pathway.
Yes, yeah, fantastic.
All righty. So let's talk. Let's talk about care management now. So care management or care coordination is an integral part of service provision for people receiving services within their home care package.
Mhm.
Can you please explain what care management is, Kathryn?
Okay, so again, it's perhaps a little bit different depending on a person's complexity of needs, but it's pretty much the coordination of a person's services. So ensuring that their needs, safety, well-being, and their interests are being looked after on an individual basis. My background in the industry is in this field as a care manager. So I would be helping people organise their services, coordinate services, monitoring budgets is always an important part of that, to make sure that we are maximising funding, making sure that we've got those clinical assessments in and that we are responding to those and making sure that the services that are recommended are implemented should the individual want to look at receiving those services, because of course they're in the driving seat. So lots of work around funding, developing and evaluating those really important care plans, which we spoke about them being based off the support plan that's put
Okay.
together at the assessment. So we're looking at care plans, and they need to be regularly reviewed as well. So there's a lot of work that goes into them so that we've always got that. So what's the word I'm looking for? Direction, really, of how a
Yes.
person, of what services a person requires and how they're going to be delivered. There's going to be, this is where I've mentioned earlier, we've got more work to do, because with home care packages, we've been used to working within an annual budget. And with support at home, we're going to be looking at quarterly budgets. So there's potentially more work around that too that's going to be included. So yeah, there's lots actually involved in care
There's a
management.
lot. Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think that if anybody was previously part of that Commonwealth Home Support Programme, and perhaps they had multiple, I would expect that they would have had multiple services. So, as we know, with CHSP, if you have been approved for, say, 5 different services, you very likely might have 5 different providers. So,
That's
people
right.
may already have experienced the complexity of care management themselves as they tried to coordinate all of their
Yes.
providers in that system, which again was another benefit to home care packages, and
Yes.
hopefully will continue with support at home, that you have a coordinator who is across everything for you.
That's a great example that you've just pointed out with, potentially people having 5 different providers under CHSP. We work with providers, and I see the amount of work that care coordinators or care managers are doing that just really isn't evident to people in the wider community, the recipients of care. It is a lot, and certainly going ahead with support at home, it's going to be a lot more until the dust finally settles on this program, which I'm
And
sure
then they'll
when that
change
will
it again.
No, don't even talk about that. Don't even think that.
FlexiCare is a not-for-profit organisation which supports older people living in Brisbane's southern suburbs to live their best lives in their own homes and communities. FlexiCare don't have grand plans to be the biggest aged care provider. They want to be known for treating each one of their participants as an individual who they get to know well. They answer their phone calls personally when clients ring them. They give their clients easy access to a home care partner who can work with them to deliver the best mix of support possible. If you're in Brisbane South and want to know more, give their friendly team a call on 07 3422 8400 or check out their website flexi.org.au.
Alrighty, let's discuss care management. So currently, care management and package management fees in this current system where we sit right now. These 2 fees relate to every person who receives a home care package. The care management fee at present can be as much as 20% of the level of package funding, and the package management fee can be as much as 15% of the level of the home care package. So potentially a provider can charge a combined admin fee, these 2 fees together, of up to 35% of your home care package. From July the 1st, there won't be a package management fee anymore, and the care management fee is decreasing from 20% down to 10%. It's a significant reduction, and one that I know the sector is grappling with. The proposal for providers is to combine this care management fee across all clients. How does a provider ensure that all clients have equitable access to care management support in this situation?
Wow, you hit me with all the tricky ones today, aren't you?
Sorry.
Oh, I know. And it is, you use the word
This is
grappling.
what we're dealing with, right?
I know,
This
and
is
we are grappling. So yeah, and going back to, so what we've been used to, the care management fee was, you mentioned that it was decreasing from 20% to 10%. The cap on that is decreasing. So not everybody has charged the whole 20%. It was just capped at 20%.
That's right.
And then the government are now capping it at 10%.
10%.
So some providers may be able to charge less than that. Who knows how it's all going to, like you say, when the dust settles.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Realistically, Coral, we've always done that. And I
Yeah.
think any provider would answer in the same way, certainly the ones that I've worked with, that, I've never experienced where you've got to, you can only call me 3 times in a
Yeah.
month and then that's it. And I won't speak to you, because human nature is not like that. And we will naturally have some clients who are on a level 3, and we're taking the percentage of fees, not necessarily 35%, can I just say?
No, no.
I know
I
that's
know
the
that for a
maximum
fact.
worst
Yeah.
case. And so then naturally, but they're, perhaps well supported at home by their family, and they may not have any cognitive decline. They're absolutely fine. So once their service is in place, everything ticks along, and they barely need to speak to their care manager. But then we might have another individual who perhaps is also level 3. Maybe they've got cognitive decline. Maybe they've already phoned in the morning and they've forgotten, and then they ring again in the afternoon. So naturally, it's always worked out that way, that person A's funding is going to be topping up person B, because we certainly I've never, like I say, experienced any cap on service provision.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting question, because I agree with you. Having said what I said before about working with providers and actually being in the office with care managers, the office of the provider, when I've done some nursing work, the care managers will never, I've never seen a care manager decline a phone call or say, Mr. Smith has already rung me 3 times this week. I can't speak with him again. I've always seen them pick up the phone and respond to that person. And I think it's an interesting thing. I was on the road all day yesterday, doing some reviews for a provider's clients. And one of them was a gentleman who the provider said he's on a level 3 home care package now, but he had been ringing his care manager a lot more than he usually does. And they said, look, we think he might be ready to go up to a level 4 package. Can you go in and do a review on him? So that's what I did yesterday. And yeah, he his needs are beyond that level 3. And we actually talked through, I said to him, look, your care manager has advised me that you're calling them a lot more. Let's talk about that. Why are you calling them? What needs do you have that are not being met right now? And we had a conversation for the next hour, and it just opened up. He's got great service provision right now. His carers are incredible, but it's just not enough. This
Yeah.
man is virtually bedbound. So, I guess if someone is calling in like that a lot, if it's a change, then you might start to think, okay, there's a reason for this. Why are they calling in? And then you would explore, do they need more help? Is
Definitely.
it time for them to go up to a higher level of home care package? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
that's
there's always
exactly what I was thinking.
always a reason why,
Yeah,
if people are calling in more. People who are not picking up the phone, we like to think that they're ticking along just fine. But if those people are suddenly calling in more often and asking for more, something's going on that they need a review and likely need more support.
And I think, and that's why regular reviews are so important anyway. Because, like you
Yes,
say, just because somebody's quiet doesn't necessarily
exactly.
mean that that they don't need anything. So,
That's
yeah,
right.
really, really crucial to do those regular reviews.
Absolutely. So currently people receive their funding on a monthly basis and their services are provided within that monthly budget. Under Support at Home, recipients or participants will receive a quarterly budget, as you've just mentioned. At the moment, people who aren't spending their monthly subsidy each month can roll over an unlimited amount of unspent funds each month, allowing them to accumulate funding. Sometimes people do this intentionally to save up for a large purchase, and sometimes this happens because they just aren't using their funding for whatever reason. The maximum amount of funding a person can roll over under Support at Home will be capped. Can you explain this for our listeners, please, Kathryn?
I'm going to try. But first of all, can I just say, if you are a person, or you're supporting a person that has a home care package and you've already saved up a surplus, don't panic. You are allowed to keep that surplus and move it
Absolutely.
across to spend within the new structure of support at home, because that was something I was really concerned about last year. That I even said to a few people, look, if you're saving up for something and you've got enough, maybe consider purchasing it sooner rather than later, because I
Yeah.
was worried that we might see them
They might
lose the
that.
surplus,
That's
and
right.
that's not happening. So don't worry if you've got a surplus. But yes, big change coming up, because, as you say, we've been used to an uncapped surplus, and that's a whole other conversation about that. Support at home participants, so that's anybody that's joining that going forward, and anybody that's already got a home care package that will move to support at home in July, will have the quarterly budgets, as we've just mentioned. And if you're not spending all of that, and there's another conversation about that,
Yes.
and you are ending up with surplus, you're only going to be allowed to carry over a maximum of $1,000 or 10% of your quarterly budget, whichever is the larger figure, I think,
That's
into
correct.
into the next quarter. So, from quarter one to quarter two, if you've got a surplus, you'll be able to take 1,000. But remember, from quarter two to quarter three, you can still only take 1,000. So
That's
it's
right.
always being capped. So it will limit, obviously, the amount of surplus sitting there that's not being accessed, which, I really feel that is a positive thing, because I
I
think
do
we've
as
seen
well.
a huge amount of untapped surplus sitting there. And then
I
we
think
obviously see
people realised what the figure was, they would actually be shocked.
shocked. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I think I even had an idea of what it was, but I don't even want to guess at what it was, because I can't believe it. It's such a lot. And then, of course, you and I are meeting people all the time who are desperately waiting for
Yes.
their funding that's been approved, and they're waiting for it to be assigned. And it's so frustrating to think there's such a lot of money that's been
It's
sitting.
sitting there.
Yes. So I'm really glad that's being addressed. How that then impacts on how we now need to purchase those bigger, more expensive items, that's interesting. And I'm scared to answer now. So let me. So
Stop
we've
being
got
scared.
the assistive technology and home
Yes.
modification scheme or fund. So that's been designed to help with some of those potential costs. So now a massive benefit is this funding, if it works like we hope it will be available upfront. So then we don't have
Yes.
to sign a client on who's in desperate need for, say, a new lift and recline chair, and then say, well, you've got your package, now we've got to wait
Got to save
and
up.
manage your
Yeah.
budget to have a surplus to. Now we're going to have a pot of money available to access upfront, which is really good. The amount of that, I don't know. What do you think about that? Because there's caps and limits about
Well, look,
the
let's
budget.
let's talk about that. I mean, that was going to be my next question or talking point with you. Is there are different levels within this new funding stream? Assistive technology and home modification is a funding stream on its own, but is alongside, the classification levels and the restorative care pathway. So let's talk about what people can get, and then I'm happy to make a comment on, is this going to be enough or not? I think just going into this, everyone really listen. I know we spoke about it last week, and it's a topic that I go on and on and on about, that right at the beginning, when you're speaking with My Aged Care, when you're making that initial call, they're going to be screening you. My Aged Care, the call centre staff screen you, but unless you provide the detail to them, I can guarantee you there will things that are going to get missed. And it's at this point, if you're needing, clinical care, you might not think you need it, but after listening to this today, hopefully you'll reflect on that a bit more. If you think you're going to need a lift, if you can't get out of the lounge chair at home, well, you probably need a lift and recline chair. So when you're speaking with My Aged Care, when you're speaking with any of the assessors, you might love that lounge chair. You've had it for 20 years, your cat sits on it.
It matches the rest of your furniture.
Exactly. But if you can't get out of it, well, that's a risk. So this is the time to say, I can't get out of my lounge chair at home. And if you can get that across an assessment, then you should be approved for this separate funding stream, assistive technology, home modifications, so that you, in this instance, chair assistive technology, you can actually purchase a new chair, a lift and recline chair, that you won't have to dip into your home care package funding for. So anyway, not hijacking your conversation anymore, Kathryn. I'm doing a bit of this today. Can you please talk us through the different levels of funding that people can get under assistive technology and home modifications?
Okay, so the levels of funding as we know today, so hopefully not subject to change, but just in case, we've been told that the level of funding will start at $500 for a low level of need, $2,000 for medium needs, and up to $15,000 for high level needs. And for those with that high need, or I guess any combination of the other, we've got a lifetime cap as well of 15,000. And please don't ask me to expand on how we're determining what that need is, because I don't know.
I guess it's really interesting. We're going from, $500 to $15,000. That's a big difference. And I'm, having been involved in that space, I'm thinking, okay, well, what is $500 going to buy you? Not much.
Not a lot.
Not much at all. It might buy you some non-slip mats. It might buy you a couple of grab rails.
Wheelie walker?
Oh, it'd have to be pretty basic model. I mean, I'm thinking about the equipment my mum had. I think her wheelie walker was about $700. My mum had this, I forget the name of it, but she had this pressure relieving cushion, which was it's like sitting on a cloud. We couldn't believe how much it cost when we purchased it. It was actually just under $700 for a cushion.
Whoa.
I mean, this cushion was incredible. It is incredible. But $500 won't even allow you to buy a falls detecting alarm. They're about $547. So $500 is not going to get you a lot.
And sorry to butt in there, but the occupational therapy assessment that you need. So as a care manager, I would need to send in an occupational therapist to work with the client, like you say, to decide where are those grab rails going to be, how high do they need to be, which chair is going to suit you. The cost of that sometimes that's not a cheap exercise, and that's got to come out of this budget too. So yeah, you're right. The 500 is not going to buy the wheelie walker and the OT assessment.
Not at all. Not at all. $2,000, that's okay, but that's still fairly basic needs. If you look at an over toilet frame, some grab rails, a wheelie walker, a couple of ramps, you're pushing that $2,000.
Yeah.
$15,000, I don't think that's too bad. I think that's okay. I mean, an electric bed will set you back about $6,000. If someone that needs a wheelie walker, a wheelchair, and an electric bed, there you go. Your $15,000 is almost being maximised there. So that amount, I guess, I think it's okay. But as you said, it's a lifetime cap. So once people have had this, they can't go back and ask for it again. And then if they want to save up in their home or their classification level, home care package classification level, they can only roll over that $1,000 or 10%. So, like we've said about a lot of other aspects, really, really interesting part of this new program that we're all watching and waiting to see how this is actually going to play out in reality.
Yeah. Oh, I was just thinking about, we have, I'm in WA over here, and it's common to see the big shower hob.
Yes. Oh, yes. Same in
And
Queensland
that's
as
a very
well.
common and I would say fairly minor home modification for people to be able to safely access their shower at home.
Absolutely.
That's going to take a big chunk. And then it's, realistic to expect that somebody that needs that modification would very realistically need, like you say, the chair, a walker, a
Absolutely.
ramp. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out.
Yeah, it is. And then we have another funding stream, which is the palliative pathway. So I'm going to let you talk about this. Who's eligible for that and how much funding could they potentially receive, Kathryn?
Well, this is a brand new thing, and it's really good to see. Obviously, comes with its own set of questions, so I'm going to try
Yeah.
my best to answer. So, we're very pleased to see this pathway that will now be available to support older people with end of life care. The pathway will make $25,000 available for participants who've been assessed as having a life expectancy of 3 months or less to live with care at home. So to be eligible for this, people will need to have a score of 40 or less on the Konovsky. Did I say that right?
You did, yes.
Konovsky performance status, which measures an individual's ability to perform their daily activities. If someone on an existing support at home, classification moves on to this pathway, it replaces their classification funding. So you won't be able to have your support at home funding and this. It will just be this. And it will be there to help provide additional home care services such as extra personal care, domestic assistance, general nursing care to complement local palliative care schemes. Dovida have palliative care trained caregivers to support with this. So our service provision is non-clinical, so we work alongside clinical staff in this space, or shall do. And it's really just ensuring that comfort and support at this very precious and difficult time.
Yeah, I love this pathway as well. End of life is an area that we work in and support people to support their loved ones to die at home, which, is what we did for our dad. As you just said, it's such a special and precious time and something to support your older loved one with. But particularly in regional and more rural or remote areas of Australia, those formalised palliative services, they're just not available. Perhaps they should be, but, they're just not. And so for people to be able to get this amount of funding to keep a loved one at home, I think it's excellent. The question we get asked is, well, what happens? I mean, no one can predict. Someone might say to a doctor, how much time have I got left? It's an impossible question to answer. I can tell you, having been involved with people, so many people at that point in their life, you just can't give a definite answer. So 3 months is what this funding is currently allocated for. And people have said to us, well, what if we get to the end of this time and mum or dad are still with us?
I was just going to ask you that. I hadn't
so I'll
thought
tell
about
you
that.
what happens. So they go back to their classification funding. So whilst they're on a package, let's use the current terminology, but it will be a classification level. They are receiving their funding. And then they get a terrible diagnosis and they're given 3 months, 2 months to live. Hopefully they get approved quickly because they're going to need an approval come through quickly to get access to this palliative pathway funding. If the older person is still with us at the end of that time, then they revert back onto their classification level, which we would hope would be a classification 8. The highest level at this point, because that's the kind of support they're going to be needing. But, a great option. It's excellent to see the recognition of the continuum of the person's life and home care provision doesn't stop when the person reaches the end of their life. You know, it continues through that phase as well. So I think this is another excellent additional fund, addition to support at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too.
Kathryn, we've covered a lot of ground again today, and you've addressed some of the key points about support at home. We're less than 3 months away from support at home being introduced now, and there are still so many questions we want the department to answer. In closing, what do you think are the advantages and possible disadvantages of support at home?
Oh, no. Definitely a renewed emphasis on person-centered care, which is what the whole industry has been working towards, and Dovida already do. So that's always going to be a good thing for our clients. It's given us an opportunity to review systems and hopefully, I'll be speaking for other providers hopefully on this, because we all have got to do this. It's forcing us to review systems and processes to be as efficient as we can be. And it encourages us to connect with our clients and our community to provide that communication and education about what's available and help people to access the right supports for them. And this is about the individual plus their families as well, who might be struggling to support as well. So, I know we have that in common, that we like to see really good outcomes for our seniors. So the good, I almost said definitely, hopefully, and I'm like, no, it's definitely definitely going to address the issue that we see in how long people are waiting for their funding. So again, perhaps by limiting the amount of unspent funds going forwards, we will be able to see that pot stretch further so that more people can benefit. I'm really hoping to see the improvement in the time it's taking for assessment as well. And that's something that the government have identified as a goal to be less than 3 months. Although I think that was by 2027, and that in a way can't come quick enough. But then also when you said this is coming in July, that also makes me go, ooh, it's coming fast. The 3 short-term pathways have good potential, but as we chatted about, they're very new. We're going to wait and see how they fall, but certainly have really good potential. So really good from an accessible point of view, and hopefully making things speedier and offering more choice. I think we sort of covered our concerns as we went through. I don't think we really covered off on this, but we've got this date of the 12th of September 2024 that keeps coming up. And I think, am I right in thinking that day, because it's a bit of a random date, was when the minister first announced these changes?
The new act was tabled in Parliament.
You're so much better than me the way you said that. But it just kind of drew a line in the sand on that day.
It did. Like we knew that it was going to happen. And there was a lot of commentary around, it's not going to happen before Christmas, Parliament's sitting for the last time this year, and it's not going to happen. And then
and we've got an election coming up, so it won't happen. And then boom, it
did on that day.
And the reason that this date haunts me is because it seems to be, and I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but that date is important because for people that were assessed for services before that date, they are covered by the no worse off principle.
Or grandfathering is another term.
Grandfathering in. And because of the delay, so it could be that somebody was assessed and they're still waiting and they haven't started their home care package yet, and they'll go straight into support at home, but they'll still won't be worse off. What am I trying to say here?
If they were waiting in the queue, if they've been approved and were waiting in the national queue or the national priority system for their package to be assigned, they will also be grandfathered.
But we have a cohort of people that will have been assessed after the 12th of September, and some of those will have had their home care packages assigned and have started with a home care package with a provider. And they'll be used to what we're used to today.
Mhm.
But when they transition on the 1st of July to support at home, they won't be protected by the no worse off principle.
No,
And that is very complicated to understand, very complicated to
it is.
explain,
It is.
and leaves them in a bit of a predicament. So I do have concerns around that date.
Yeah, look, it's actually been a conversation I've been having with a number of colleagues, and there is one of the I've been reading so many documents in the past few weeks. I think I'm, what do they call it?
Burnt
Information
out.
fatigue or something. Yeah, I literally, my
Yeah.
mind feels like it's scrambling with all the information I've left. But I have seen a table that explains from a financial co-contribution point of view what that looks like for those people, that aren't eligible for no worse off
Mhm.
after the 12th of September. But just to let everybody know, I have another guest speaker coming up we're devoting individual episodes for these different cohorts. So she is going to give us a lot more detail around that. But for the purpose of today's episode, I will go back. I've got like a gazillion tabs open on
I
my
bet you do.
computer
Yeah.
and get the documents that relate to this cohort, and we will put it into the show notes.
And I will be tuning into that. Thank you.
Yes.
Another concern, which again we've sort of joked about really as we've moved through, is that we've already seen the government have released information and then done a bit of a
Retracted
UE on
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yes. So they were, and yeah, well, I will mention it just in case people are still unsure out there. In fact, one of my colleagues this morning said she took a call just yesterday from somebody that still thought there were caps. So
Right.
when support at home was first started to be talked about, and we're talking last year, the government suggested there were going to be, or had advertised there'll be caps on services for domestic assistance and gardening. And everybody went, and
Yeah.
thankfully, the government have listened to that, and then they have scrapped those caps for now. And I
Yes.
think, but it is a concern that it's really important that we communicate out at this point to let people know what's coming and how that may affect
Mhm.
them. But I'm concerned if, we are genuinely telling you to the best of our ability, what we know
Yes.
now, but it could it could change
It
tomorrow
could.
and make us
And
look
I
daft.
think it's a really important point to highlight. And everybody I speak to, even the information we're putting out, we're saying
Mhm.
at this point in time, because, there have been changes already, and I expect that there will be changes ongoing. One of the big ones that, I've got an assessing background, used to be an ACAT assessor. One of the big concerns I have, great, the IAT, the form that is the assessment form that assessors are now using builds on previous information. But if a person's needs change rapidly, like today they're fine, they don't need any clinical care, tomorrow they fall, they get a bunch of skin care tears, they need wound care, they need a nurse, they need that wound care immediately. So if nursing care isn't identified at a person's assessment and they're not approved for that under their support plan, how quickly, realistically, are assessors going to pick up that support plan review request and approve them for nursing care? And I know I'm not the only one thinking about this.
Mhm.
That has to happen immediately. So, I have real concerns about that. Honestly, I feel that assessors should, hello, all assessors out there, please keep this in mind. It can change in less than 24-hour period. If you think, or there's an indication if the older person has fragile skin, they're probably going to need some nursing support. So maybe just approve them for that when you're doing that assessment with them. That is my hope, because we know how long it's taking for people to get assessed now. I honestly believe it's not going to become quicker because I don't believe the flexibility is built into the assessment process at this time.
Excellent point. Yeah.
We don't have all the answers. We don't. And we are literally digging. We are sifting through the government's website. Every time I get a newsletter from the department, you follow those links and you go down the rabbit warren of all the information that's not out there publicly and you stumble across it. This is honestly what happens. So, and that's what we're all doing. So I think what I just want to, the point I'd like to make to everyone that's listening to the podcast today and people who are not, who might be asking these questions in social media support groups or whatever, is that we don't have all the answers. We're trying to understand as much as we can to this point in time, but we are kind of being drip fed the information. It's not all out there yet. So we're doing the best we can. And we try to answer your questions as best as we possibly can with the information that's available at this point in time.
Thank you, Coral. You do a great job.
So look, I've just said there is so much to understand about this new program, Support at Home. July the 1st is coming really, really quickly. You've given our listeners an insight into what the changes will mean for them in the coming months. It's really been great chatting with you again, Kathryn, and I just want to say thank you for taking the time to talk today, and it's been fun too.
Thank you for having me. It has been fun.
Listeners, if you want to follow up with Kathryn or take a closer look at how Dovida supports clients with home care packages, all the links and the contact details are in the show notes below. I just want to wish you all a great week and I look forward to seeing you all at the next episode next Tuesday.
Thank you, Coral.
Hey, Care community. Thanks for listening to this episode. So you never miss a show, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. If you'd like to know more about what we do, head to our website, cmeacn.com.au.